Good evening and salutations, my Days of Our Lives fans. So, this was a good episode with a lot of fluff in it. So I'm gonna get to the best stuff, and then we'll just talk about the other stuff. So yeah, Ava is Charlie's mother. You know, I'm not gonna lie. I said yesterday, I was like, wow, there's no way that, that could be his mother with the way that she's talking to him. Like, he's some sort of secondary piece of garbage. Well, I was wrong. Jesus Christ, I was wrong. So yeah. Ava is Charlie's mother. And throughout this talk, she gets him to admit that Charlie raped Allie. And, goodness. Here's the thing about a bad guy and about a villain or whatever. There's a lot of things that you can sit there and, I wouldn't sit there and say forgive, but you can kind of move past. That isn't one of them. That's not one of them at all. So, at that point, he is just, in my opinion, irredeemable. Yeah, he's irredeemable. Which kind of brings me to my whole, how is Luke Spencer people still like knowing what he did? And that's the thing, even people that don't know about General Hospital know about Luke and Laura. The greatest couple, the greatest thing, and like, ever, and knowing what he did to Laura, people still like him. That's, like, unbelievable. But yeah, she gets him to confirm that he did it. He tries to explain his way of why it wasn't that bad, and he didn't mean to hurt her, and yada, yada, yada. Listen, there's no explanation in the world. There's no explanation in the world that can ever justify doing that to someone. Ever. But up until this point, before, he admitted it, he would sit there, he talked to her, and he was like, you never really treated me as a son, Trip was always the best, this, that, and the third, I was always secondary, always nothing, and that's, listen, up until that point, that sucks. That sucks. There's no excuse for that. When she was all like, oh, well, I was in emotional distress, I had my son taken away from me. Are you serious? Do you not see him standing right there? Now, here's the thing. But they always sit there and say, you're not supposed to sit there and have a favorite son, a favorite daughter, a favorite child. That's what they say. Now, that is BS. Even on a subconscious level, they're always going to have a favorite. Whether you want to admit it or not, you just do. You can say that you treat them equally, but, at the end of the day, some people just tend to lie to themselves. This woman just seems like she has no problem just openly admitting that she's always going to treat Trip better than Charlie. And that sucks. But Charlie's a rapist, so, in this case, that just kind of goes out the window. But with that being said, Charlie pretty much begs Ava to not tell the cops what Charlie did, to not tell Trip that he has a half-brother. He begs her. And now she's standing there with this guilt trip because she knows that she treated Charlie like garbage his entire life. She kind of looks at this situation like, you know what, listen, and I'm assuming, because she just flat out just called the cops right then and there, that she's just like, you know what, listen, Trip is going to ride this out. Let me do this one thing for him. And I'm assuming that she's gonna just keep a secret. Now we all know Ava's history of what she did to Steve. So I'm pretty sure that's also a factor in her decision to not, you know, not give up, Charlie to the cops. Because I kept sitting there saying, you know what? How is she going to, throw one child under the bus to save another? If this was any other ordinary circumstance, crime, murder, or whatever, I can understand. This is like the worst thing you can possibly do. So, with that being said, yes, throw his ass under the bus. But we all know that she's not going to do that. For those reasons that I said, and to drag out this story a little bit longer than it probably needs to be dragged out. With that being said, Trip is actually at the door, waiting for her to open it. Now, a little bit back, Trip is sitting there talking to Steve, and Steve is just like, listen, you need to be careful for Ava, because she will drag your life down, and given her background, given everything that happened to her, it's just one of those things that's just gonna happen, Her whole backstory is pretty effed up, from the stuff that her father did, just her whole upbringing. But, it is what it is. And, Steve was like, listen, she's going to hold on to dear life to keep the people that she loves in her life no matter what. And it can be smothering. And Steve, Trip wants to give her a second chance, She's like, listen, I know what I'm going into. And if I suspect something, I'm out. He wants to give her a second chance. He never had her in her life, and, there's no proof saying otherwise, so he's going to give her the benefit of the doubt. And I guess we'll just wait and see. Now, we'll get to the lesser stuff. Allie and Claire. Claire, I just don't really have a use for her. Allie, I think we all know how I feel about her. They're talking about Charlie like he's the best thing ever. He's the perfect guy, yada, yada, yada. And, she also sits there and kind of slips up by saying that, hey, I also talked to Charlie about your rape, which she shouldn't have did. Regardless of how I feel about her, she shouldn't have did that. But they get past it, and they talk about Charlie, it's the best thing ever, and when you meet him, you're going to see what kind of a great and wonderful guy that he is. Now, I have a feeling that when she meets him, some of her memories are going to come back. Some of her memories are going to come back, and she's going to be like, this guy looks familiar. And this is why I will sit there and say this until I'm blue in the damn face. You need to absolutely be sure 100% that this guy Trip did this to you. Because the minute that she comes out her mouth and sits there and say, oh, well, this guy looks familiar. Oh, well, now I don't know if Trip really... They've written this character, Allie, in the poorest way possible. So I feel bad for the actress that's playing her, because she couldn't be a... I mean, there's always worse characters, but she is a real POS of a character. But yeah, I have a feeling she's going to start to recognize him. And I guess we'll just wait and see. Now, with that being said, we'll talk about even lesser stuff, and that is Brady and Chloe. Honestly, tell you the truth, what they do is talk about Philip, and she feels bad for Philip because she feels that Philip is in something that he's in over his head as far as debt is concerned. Now, Brady doesn't like Philip for reasons that I don't know, because I'm still somewhat new to this show. But he doesn't really care. He's like, oh, well, it's Philip being Philip. And they also talk about Mimi, whatever her name is that I can't remember, breaking Philip and Chloe up. And that's pretty much about it. Other than that, there's some sort of somewhat disaster, and that Chloe has to go to Philip for help as far as some sort of factory. So we'll have more Philip and Chloe scenes, which is actually kind of good. I'm not gonna lie, it's actually kind of good because she seems like she brings out the best in Philip. Aside that, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even really know existed. Up until this point, I pretty much called him a man-child. While he still does have man-child tendencies, he also has a different side to him. And it's so weird me sitting there saying this. As much as I call Philip a man-child and a tattletale and every other name in the book, why is it that, and I hate saying this, and I almost feel like I'm going to throw up in my mouth saying this, but why is it that I actually am starting to like Philip, or at least watching Philip more than I like watching Chad? Because Chad just comes across as a dick. And he does have man-child tendencies. They're not as bad as Philip, but he's also kind of a dick. So there's that. But yeah, it should be interesting when Chloe and Philip does talk, when they have discussion or whatever, and so that'll be interesting. Let's see what else, and we'll get to the last scene, which is Victor and Philip. So they're talking. Victor and Philip are talking, and Victor's like, you know what? It's not like I don't see what you're doing. You're gonna sit there and get close to Sarah, so it can get under Xander's skin, and he does something, and I have to fire him. You know what? Listen, I don't know Victor that much, and I'm pretty sure he's done some really terrible things as far as Sarah and the baby and everything like that, but he's not an idiot. And I'm so glad that he actually called Philip out, in his whole plan. It actually kind of makes me a little bit sad, because I would actually like to see what Philip was like what Victor was like in his heyday. Plus, every now and then, Victor can actually make me laugh. Which is actually impressive, because sometimes I always sit there and look at the humor in the show, and sometimes I think it's kind of like, every once in a while it's a little kind of cringe and kind of like hokey, but Victor has a way of making me laugh. Anyway, after they talk about the whole, Xander thing, towards the end, Victor is like, listen, Xander may be my family as far as, my nephew, but you're my son, and I sleep well knowing that, Titan is in your capable hands. And I'm just like, well, Philip, feeling guilty yet? And I'm pretty sure you're feeling guilty. Because, damn, that was a guilt trip. I don't think that was intended on Victor's part, but I know that made Philip feel guilty. Which is good, because it seems like, he has some sense of morality. He's not a total scumbag. And Maggie came in, said her lines, talking about Ava, and, Victor was like, well, it's a good thing that we don't have any dealings with her, because we don't have a target on our back. Right, Philip? I'm sorry, but I gotta kind of sit there and laugh about some of this stuff, because I know, looking at Philip's face, he felt guilty once again, which is good. Because, one, he should, and two, it shows against that he has some sort of sense of morality. Some sense, anyway. And you know what? Now that I sit there and think about it, I'm surprised that Victor didn't call Philip out on the fact that, bro, that's your... you're not related, but, that's still, your stepsister. What are you doing? That's gross. Stop it. Yeah, he called her out on trying to get under, Xander's skin to do something, but not the fact that, you shouldn't probably be doing that stuff in general because, you know, that's your stepsister. But, whatever. What else? And yeah, that's actually gonna do it. Like I said, my favorite parts was the whole Charlie and Ava thing. I mean, listen, it sucks that Ava treated Charlie like trash his entire life. Always was the second, you know, always was second to Trip. Didn't even sit there and try to deny it. And, you know, even when she was sitting there walking up to him like, oh, you're my son or whatever, it's like, like, really? Like, that almost irked me a little bit. Don't get me wrong. Charlie's still trash. But just the simple fact that you tried to play the whole, oh, you're my son too. No, just stop. Like, you treat him like trash his entire life, which is, really says a lot about you. Because you should never really sit there and, like, I'm going to sit there and say you should never sit there and have favorites, but, like, come on. Like, really? But in this case, I'm not going to lie. Charlie's trash, so I guess in reality it doesn't really matter. But yes, that was my favorite part. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow's episode and see how that's going to go down. Because at least it's going to be something good. Also, Steve is going to talk to Allie a little bit. And it was kind of weird because the minute that Allie walked up to Steve, and, you know, Steve was like, you know, we got to talk. You know, we didn't really get a chance to talk. You know, you got some free time. And Allie was like, yeah, I guess. Like, she almost didn't even want to sit there. She almost didn't even want to sit there and say yes. Like, she just wanted to just dart out. I mean, I guess in her defense, you know, Steve already took him aside. But at the very least, you could sit there and hear him out. Oh, man, it's gonna be so bad tomorrow. I mean, good, bad, but, like, I know that Steve is going to sit there and try not to nudge the conversation towards, you know, protecting Trip. But he's going to do it, even if it's on the subconscious level. And I guess we're just waiting to see what poor Allie's, how she's going to respond. And yes, with that being said, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. Be safe. Let me know what you thought of this episode. I will catch you in the next video.